All right, so we are going to take our pinch pots to the next step. And so what I did is I sketched out a few design ideas for mine. I'm going to work on a few different things. So these are some of the ideas that I have. I want to make one into an animal with some ears on it. I was looking at possibly making the one that's like a flower shape with some stamp designs on it, and then making one that's rounded with texture and feed on it, just to show you a few different things. So I'm going to move this out of the way. And so I have a few different pinch pots that I've worked on. So this is the one I was demonstrating on earlier. This is one from a demo the other day where I've kind of made it more a little bit like a vessel that pours. Okay. And then this one is a little more bathtub shaped, just to show you a few different things. And then this one here, I actually have a round ear on it. And this one has bunny ears on it. I'm not sure if I'll finish all these during the demonstration, but I'll show you a few different things that you can do. So I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. All right, so first thing I want you to know, your clay needs to be kind of an even thickness around it, all the way around. It should be there already with that. If not, you can still pinch on it some, as long as it doesn't start cracking on you when you're working on it, that's fine. And then the next thing is that when you attach something, you need to score, you need to add slip, and you need to weld. And so I'm going to demonstrate that for you, as well as how to make the pieces. So this is the little flower shape here, and I am going to use the back end of a highlighter marker, or the cap of it for the stamp design. I wanted something other than a stamp that I made, so that you could see that you could use all different kinds of things for these. So I'm going to grab some clay. And remember, if your clay is too dry, you can re-moisten it. This should work fine for what we need. And I'm going to need 2, 4, 6, 8 balls. So I'm going to grab 8 pieces of clay that are all about the same size. I would prefer to find something a little bit smaller, but I wanted to get started with this. A pencil eraser is great. You can actually kind of carve into it and make designs. We might even try both to see which we like. That's a little bit smaller than the pen. We've got 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp a design into these and attach them on there. So first of all, where I'm going to stamp them, I need to score. And so you have your little paper clip. I would just kind of bend it so that one end sticks out, whatever's comfortable for you as far as holding it. You can also use anything else that's sharp to do this. So I'm just going to score, which means scratch up the surface where I'm going to attach them, which is the indentation on each particular piece. Now, if I don't do this, it may stick, it may not. Chances are it will fall off. So it's worth taking the time of doing this. All right, so those have all been scored. What I'm going to do now is make these into little balls. And I don't need them perfect, because part of the concepts we talked about the other day on these is that they are handmade and they're meant to look a little handmade. All right, so now if I was going to attach this ball onto it, I want to score the ball. So I'll just score a couple of them and then we'll try them out and see what we like. Actually, before we do that, let's test them. So this is with the eraser. If I support it in my palm and push in here, so it just looks like a ball with a hole in it. And if I use the pen, it's actually like a little flower shape. This actually might work pretty good. So I'm going to try that one. These are getting a little bit dry, so I'm going to just throw them in the bucket and I'll re-moisten them with some other clay later, and I'll grab 2 more pieces right now. All right. They don't need to be exactly the same size, but close would be helpful. And so what I'm going to do is score, let's just say 3 of them and try 3, and if we like it, then we'll continue on with the rest of them. All right, and then so that's, both sides have been scored. Now you take your slip. So I have my slip that I made the other day, and your slip should be made already. If it isn't, you need to stop, make your slip, and then come back to this, because the slip's going to need to set to kind of really smooth out its consistency. So I'm just going to put slip on all 3 of these right now, right where I scored them. All right, and a little bit of this slip will ooze out when I squish it on there, I'm sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this little ball on there. From the back side, I'm going to support it so that it doesn't distort the shape too much, and I'm going to stamp it with a pen. Let's see here, probably like this. So I got my little shape there. All right, so that looks pretty good. Okay, so I have them all done on there. They look kind of interesting. I think looking at these, I decided I'd like to flare them out a little bit more, so I'm just gonna make sure everything is a little bit moist. And without squishing them, I'm gonna bend them down very slightly, so it makes them face up more and it's a little bit easier to see them, okay? And then what I'm gonna do is build a little pedestal for this one now. So I've got this little piece of, all right. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just go ahead and, after wedging it, I'm gonna tap it onto the table to make a pinch pot. And I want this pinch pot to be kind of long and skinny. So I'm gonna work it into the ball shape now. And so the trick to making it long and skinny is, so make your hole like normal. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pinch and pull and try to pull some length out of it. It's still gonna spread out here as I do that, but I'm kind of pushing with my thumb and pulling it. And it's okay if I lose the bottom because it's gonna be attached to the bottom of this afterwards. So if you think about kind of like a toadstool bottom, that's what this is gonna be like. I want it to be strong enough to support the little flower piece that I'm making, but doesn't need to be much bigger or stronger than that. Okay, so as I'm doing this, to attach it, there's 3 things that I need to do. Can you remember all 3 of them? It's one of those things that's like wedging. It's a mantra in this class. It's score, slip, and weld. If you don't do those, this will probably fall off later on. All right, so I've got it made, and I think I'm gonna bend the bottom out a little bit and the sides in, so I'm just kind of pushing on those like this as I go around it. And then I'm gonna attach it up here, so I want a nice surface connection, so make sure this is flat enough. So what do I need to do? I need to do score. So I'm gonna score all the way across the top. And when I attach this scoring, I want the scoring on the other piece to be the same direction where I attach them. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is flip this over carefully. It's fairly wet. We just made this one today. The other pieces we made the other day, so they're a little firmer, more leather hard. All right, so I've scored that pretty good. I'm gonna add the slip to this one because this is the right size here. The other piece I'm not exactly sure. All right, so I'm gonna put that on there. The scoring goes this way. So I can tell my scoring I went way too big on the top piece, but I'll fix that afterwards by smoothing. All right, so I'm just working it in, which this is the welding process. So I scored, I added the slip, and now I'm welding it on, kind of working it back and forth. You want to actually be able to hold it afterwards without it falling off. I don't usually test the pieces. I just make sure that I've done what I needed to do to make sure they're supported good. Now the other thing is you'll want it to sit a certain way, so you always test it. Oh, that's beautiful, perfect. But I do want, this side's a little high, so I could work on kind of pushing in here a little bit to make it level out a little bit. I don't need it perfectly level, but I do want it to be fairly level. Okay, so that's worked in pretty good. Now I am going to do the thing where I put a coil around there and just an extra layer of design. So my clay here, with a coil, it will definitely crack because you're going to stretch the clay out a lot if it's dry. So I'm just adding a little bit of extra moisture on this. So take your clay, and roll out your coil. Make sure it stays damp enough. And then in this particular case, I'm not going to score everything. I'm going to make sure I put a little bit of slip around there. I'm going to make sure this is nice and slippery, but it's going to seal together, and it should not be an issue on coming off because it's connected to itself. There's really nowhere for it to go. So my tool is too big, so I'm going to grab, I just happen to have a chopstick. I'm going to grab a little chopstick to work the slip in there. So I'm going to use a skinny end. Okay, I'm going to take my coil, I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to break one side off, and then the other one I'm just going to very slightly overlap it. And with this I'm going to make a little button like we did on the top. And this one I am going to score, and a little bit of slip. And I'm going to do that same design on this, but I'm going to support it carefully so I don't squish everything. It's not hard enough. There we go. All right, so I could add more of those buttons on there if I wanted, but I don't really want to do overkill. And on the top, I messed up the shape a little bit, so I'll kind of rework this. But basically with this one, you can see the design, you can see how it is. Everything looks pretty nice. The last step on this would be to sign your name and put a period number, because I'm going to be firing these without you guys here, and I need to know where to send them to. You could write it under here if you like. I generally will write on the inside of mine. Now, if you have a small pedal stool like this, it's hard to do, and I'll show you on the other pieces. On something like this, there is no inside, so you would just sign right on the bottom there. This one here, set this down. This one here I signed right there. This one you can't really see it, but my name and date are both right there. You get the idea. And just for that, take a pencil or something and then carve it in there. Now you're going to end up with little, what I call clay boogers. These are the little shards of clay that when you do this, they kind of leave like these little sharp clumps. As this gets more firm, you can break those off afterwards. Any of those things become real sharp later on in the kiln. Just polish it now, make sure everything's how you want it. If you want to add any texture, you can. But that's the first one.